Yeah, we'll turn it off once you come. How's everybody? Everybody's good? You ready? We're ready to go? You ready?
Wendy's going to
I know, but then we're started. It's like pushing away from the gate. We're not going to do anything. Anything routine?
Oh, good. The Wilshire bus only lane. Do we have the bus riders here?
4.
Item number 4 is before us right now. We're on, right? It's the consent item, item number 4.
Item number 4 is a city attorney report and ordinance relative to amending the municipal code to provide for free parking for certain alternative fuel vehicles.
Right, all right, good. We're going to have Ms. Gruhl take over right now. We just pushed away from the gate.
You're on the tarmac?
We're on there.
You have a quorum? Did I miss something?
No.
Oh, okay.
We proved everything and we're out of here.
Away from the gate. We just started it. So we saved 60
Went to the other
seconds.
room.
Say 60 seconds.
Oh, Tommy, this is
No,
just...
I like yours. I like this.
Oh, thank you. That's someone else's.
Good.
Thank you.
It's right there. We got that all straight here.
Okay. Now that we have a quorum, we can have 4 on consent. There.
What is 4 on that? What are we doing on 4 though?
It's just the final ordinance.
Sunset day. Sunset.
I think everybody should start paying for parking meters now, though. This
Well,
goes against this?
Yeah, we made this decision as an interim step. This item is just actually the implementation of what we voted on already.
But were we going to vote on it again? Or we already voted on
Voting
it?
on the ordinance, so if you wish to vote no,
This
you
is
can
just
do
a
that.
follow-up ordinance that followed the instructions of the full council to change the sunset date.
I understand, but
To
just, do
conform
we
to
know
state
what? I
law.
know. It's okay. I just had a question there. Do you know how many cars or how many parking
Well,
spots, how
if you
much
wanna get to
revenue?
that item, we'll start on item 1. We'll come then to item 4. We won't vote on consent then. We'll start back on item 1. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is a DOT report relative to the West Los Angeles Rail Corridor and connectivity analysis and related matters.
Thank you very much. I want to have a report from the department, and I know this is instigated by my colleague and funds within your traffic mitigation area. So do we have someone from the department that is going to
Yeah, give us an update.
update? No one is jumping forward.
Is there anybody from DOT to report on this rail corridor and connectivity?
I think someone was planning to be here. Why don't we hold this one and come back to it?
We'll do that. That's where I went to, so that's why I was a few minutes late. No one was there, but we'll hold that item. So, Mr. Rosendahl has asked for item number 5, if we could go next on item number 5.
Item number 5 is a Rosendahl-Smith motion relative to directing DOT in coordination with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works to take steps to close the bicycle entrance gate along Culver Drive between Purdue and Sotel.
Okay. Excuse me, I just was handed the cards. Mr. Rosendahl, do you want to hear a presentation first or public comment first?
To do is the following, just to give a little history for everybody here in the room. I do constituent hours, and I see any constituent who signs up for constituent hours. And during that experience, I had several constituents come to me with great outrage about some safety concerns. In fact, one father, and they're probably going to speak, talked about how his son got beaten up right outside of where they live by a group of kids that were coming through a gate that suggested that gate became part of the situation. We then saw a letter from the LAPD strongly saying that gate needs to be closed and that it was a safety issue. Then we thought it was the county, and it's not the county. Then we find out it's the city. Then it's not the city. Then finally the city bites the bullet and says it's ours, therefore we're the people you should be dealing with. This motion talked about closing the gate. It's become controversial since then. Many bicyclists feel that's an entry point, that once you close one gate, you close others. And Culver City did all that, and the Culver City people, bicyclists can't get much places in Culver City because of the closing of the gates. So there's controversy on this. What I thought we could do is let the folks who first came to me talk about why, and then have the bike riders respond, and then we see where we feel as a committee at that point.
Okay, and the
Can I ask, Madam Chair, since this is a special meeting, can we have 1 minute public comment? Only because I'm not going to be able to keep the schedule that I had before I knew I had a special meeting. I don't want you to break quorum, so.
Okay, are we
If people need
anticipating
extra time, give them
additional
extra time.
Council members?
I have not heard one way or the other on that.
The other two, okay. All right, at this point, we'll do 1 minute, and if need be, we will extend that time. So you said you wanted the residents to go first, Mr.?
Yes, I would. Those who came to me first. and
Okay. I
presented
believe
the
that would
issue.
be then, and we have two chairs, Bob Thayer and Lou Corbin first.
Please.
And Howard Hackett, are you also a community member or a bicycle? What? Okay, okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thanks for having us here. And
Say your name for the record.
Yeah, I'm Lou Corbin, and I'm one of the residents that lives adjacent to the gate. And since I only have like 53 seconds, I'm going to just lay it out here. Okay. Well, all of us that live adjacent to the gate, it's been a lot of problem with, particularly with the gangbang activity from the Mar Vista Gardens, Culver City Boys. That's the main issue here. All of our homes that live adjacent, we've all been burglarized by this activity, and they all use the gate as their main escape route through that gate. Our children have been jumped and robbed. Our wives and our kids are terrorized by this activity for these gangs who use that gate. This is a drop spot for stolen cars. They drop them there and they run through the gate and go back to the projects. They've torched them, blown them up. Our cars have been vandalized and stolen. The gangbangers, they show up in carloads. They do not live in our neighborhood. They sit in front of our house. They smoke dope. They go through the gate. They use it for drug deals, gang fightings, gang meetings. Our wife and our kids are afraid to go out of the house. There's constant
Give him another minute.
constant gang tagging around the gate area. This is diminishing property values. They even tagged the for sale signs. About a year and a half ago, a 9-year-old kid was dragged from the gate down into underneath the freeway there, was raped. The gangs, LAPD does not have the resources to cover this. We've discovered this. It's a major drop spot for drugs. We go through this all the time. The residents there have used all of our own money to cover up a lot of the painting, graffiti that goes on there. We have submitted a redesign idea for the gate. And oh, by the way, just to make it perfectly clear on this record, there is another big gate about 200 yards up the creek on Sotel, Sepulveda, where they can access it. And it won't filter all this gang activity through our neighborhood. These people do not live in our neighborhood. We don't have any problem with the bicyclists. They can go use Sepulveda. It's 2 minutes out of their way. We're subjected to this gang activity on a daily basis. It's got to stop.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
He pretty much said it. I just have to reiterate.
Bob Thayer.
I'm Bob Thayer.
Thanks.
It's just out of control. You know, I know we're going to have people that come in and say it's an access issue, it's a safety issue for the people on the bike path. But if my wife can't even, she's afraid to go outside when I'm not home. This is, where do these people live where they're afraid to go outside of their own home because they're using this? We see drug deals going on all the time. They park in front of the gate, people run up the bike path, buy from them, and leave. We call the police. Oh, sure, they're there in 45 minutes.
Maybe.
They say it's a police issue sometimes. I say it's a design issue. If we could get that gate closed and made so that they have an access for maintenance only, have the gate just raised up, it'll cost a couple of $1,000s to do, and I know that's probably not the issue with these people here, and I kind of see where they're coming from, but they don't live in the neighborhood. It's not their lives. They're not having their houses graffitied and their cars vandalized or burglarized, and we've all had it done. Almost every single person right around that gate has been burglarized. I don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
Is it the activities occurring more in the evening than the daytime?
Usually during the daytime, because that's when they're out of school, or, well, I guess they're out of school in the evening. But it's usually when most people are at work. Now, I'm working, he's working, most of us are at work. The people who are left are the ladies who have kids at home or nobody.
Yeah.
And the places,
Challenge.
the places get burglarized. They use the bike path entrance as a lookout. They'll sit somebody there
On the cell phone.
on their cell phone, and they'll just sit there and watch from the bike path and direct people behind our houses.
Just a question for you. You said that 2 minutes away is what, Sepulveda? And is that an entrance there?
They have a
Oh,
big
yeah.
gate, yeah.
There's a
Huge.
big gate at
On a-
Sepulveda.
On a public street, there's no reason to have this entrance.
In a residential
In
neighborhood.
a corner, in a crook of a corner where there's residences all around. It's just,
Yeah, and the crux of it, which we've talked about before, is LAPD does not have the resources to cover it. They've got Oakwood and they've got the Mar Vista Gardens there to patrol, and we're the far corner of their jurisdiction. And half the time they don't even show up. They don't have they just don't have the manpower, and so that's why they've asked to have the gate closed too, because it's an issue for them, because we call them constantly.
Okay.
And this gang fighting activity there, where they call it the jump-ins and stuff, it spilled over onto our front yards.
We had, was it 20 or 40?
Whatever, it was a whole bunch of kids.
One from this side of the gang bike path, the other one this way. They met at the gate,
gate.
Okay.
and they had it was like watching a movie.
And it spilled into our front yards.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
The rest of you aren't speaking, but you're with them.
Yeah, neighbors, yeah.
Okay.
The neighbors want to stand, those that are present with you today?
You guys stand up.
Just so we know.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
kind of afraid to speak in front of people.
That's
but I'm
okay.
one of
That's
the
right.
ones that are home all
That's
day
right.
long.
Thank you. We just wanted to acknowledge that you were here, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Jay Slater and Howard Hackett.
Maybe you could do Ken Strumpel next, because he's our bicycle guy.
It's always a pleasure to come before this committee. By way of introduction, my name is Jay Slater. I'm a member of the...
I think probably we're going to have to do 2 minutes because I apologize for that, but I think we
Thank
want to
you.
have the 2 minutes.
Thanks for the
Please
time.
would
I
you?
will try to make it quick. I'm a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee of the City of Los Angeles, also a member of the Caltrans District 7 Advisory Council, a member of and a chairman of a committee on the PCH Task Force run by Senator Sheila Kuehl, and a member of the Lagrange Cycling Club, and a member of the board. This gate is an important gate for cyclists to enter and leave the Ballona Creek area. Ballona Creek is now one of the more bike-friendly areas for us to ride, in that it is completely enclosed and has no cars, no traffic for us to have to negotiate and be afraid of. There are cyclists and runners and bladers and skateboarders and others who use Ballona Creek all day long. Those people can be the eyes and ears of the LAPD and the residents in the community. Most of them carry cell phones and are certainly unafraid to use them. This is, and listening to the presentations, I have a lot of empathy for what's going on in this neighborhood as we ride by it all the time, but this is an LAPD issue. This isn't about keeping cyclists and runners and walkers and everybody who uses Ballona Creek off the creek. It's, in fact, a responsibility of the LAPD. And if crime has gotten to this position now where it needs to be really seriously dealt with, they can begin to bring out more officers, because they have officers on the bike team now. The bike squad has officers on Ballona Creek on a regular basis now. We see them out there all the time. On a personal note, I ride Ballona Creek at least twice a week. Many, many times early in the morning in the dark, thanks to our new time with daylight savings time, and have yet to ever encounter an incident on the creek. And as Councilman Rosendahl is aware, our club and the other clubs in the area, of which there are probably 2,000 members who live in CD11, probably CD5, are pretty strong people who are unafraid to take on or to report an incident, and we have had none. We have had one incident that I can think of in the last 5 years, and it was a minor one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hackett.
I'm Howard Hackett, and let me see, I'm a member of the Basic Car, the police department, and we meet once a month and talk about crime in the area. And I got a call this morning from the lead officer, and she told me that from March 07 until this March, there's been 4 burglaries on the bike path in this area. So this is a low crime area. But that's not the reason I'm here to oppose this gate closing, because of that reason. The reason is you guys recently approved the bicycle master plan for the city of Los Angeles. And what that means is we want to improve this bicycling for citizens so that we can get around and leave our cars in the garage. Now, one of the things we're really working on is to get bicycle highways. Now, we have one bicycle highway and on the west side, and it's the Bologna Creek, and it goes from the beach 8 miles into Culver City. And right now it's being beautified at 3 entrances, Sepulveda, McConnell, and Englewood. And they're just going to be beautified so people they'll want to ride on the bike path. And there's now in the Baldwin Hills Regional Park, they're building an overlook, and there'll be a connection from the bike path up to the park so that people can ride their bikes or even hike. The people that live in this neighborhood where they want this thing closed, they can hike up there 2 miles or less and get to the overlook and see the whole city, the ocean, the whole world from up there. And that's being built right now. It's going to be open very soon. So I'm just going to close by saying May the 15th is Bike to Work Day, and I expect you guys all to ride your bikes to work and appeal to all of your constituents to ride your bikes, especially you, Bill.
It's my
Thank you
birthday,
very
May
much.
15th.
Happy birthday.
It's what?
My birthday.
Well, I'll ride your bike for your birthday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ken Strumpel, Stephen Box.
Hi. Ken Struppel. I'm on the city's bicycle advisory committee as well. I sympathize with the neighbors who are having problems on their street there with the issues that they perceive as are precipitated by this gate. But I want to remind us all that this is a transportation corridor with a really important function in our city. At a time when we're trying to find alternatives to automobile congestion, we need to be enhancing these sort of corridors and not making them ever less useful. I often use this trail multiple times a week. It's not just a recreational path. And from the standpoint of trail users, closing it will actually make it less safe. It will isolate them. It will prevent them from being able to get help if they need it, and these situations have occurred. It will restrict law enforcement from having easy access to the trail. So I'm confused by the report that the bill has gotten from the police, because everything I've heard to this point suggests that the trail is a low crime area, and the real crime happens on the streets where cars can get. So I highly encourage us to put a hold on this motion for now, to explore other options. We were out there yesterday, and I was very surprised to see that there's no street lighting in this area. I think one of the first things the neighbors could do would be to petition for street lighting. Enhancing the visibility and the access is also important to improving safety there. Patrols and monitoring could also be looked at as options. I don't know if video monitoring is something that could be considered. But primarily, I think this would set a very bad precedent. And moving the entrance to another location is just like shuffling traffic around a neighborhood as well. I don't see that it's solving the problem. So I urge you to put a hold on this so we can explore other options.
Madam Chair, if I could ask Kent a question. What about down at Sepulveda using that? They're saying it's 2 minutes away.
I'd be willing to look into that if we, put everything on the table and not take this action right now.
Because, I can read you the letter from the police. It's pretty clear to me what they're saying. They say Pacific Police Station has reviewed the request for a permanent closure of the access gate. We are in support of this closure and request a permanent fence raised to the same height as the existing fence, replace the existing gate. However, if the fence requires an opening to the Bayona Creek bike path for emergencies, then we request the gate be locked at all times and raised to the height of the existing fence. The purpose of this is to prevent persons from climbing over the fence in an event they would request it for the gate. And then it mentions over an 18-month period, there's been a murder, assault with deadly weapons twice, robbery 3, burglary 7, burglary with motor vehicle 4, grand theft 4. 4 of the above crimes occurred right there in the path. It is believed the suspects utilized the described access gate to ingress and egress the crime scene. This is an LAPD letter dated August 9, 2007.
Okay, well, I'd ask to compare that with adjacent streets where they have crime as well. Because when we have crime incidents on streets, we don't talk about closing the streets and the sidewalks. I don't see why it's even being considered here, and I would like to even explore whether it's legal. I mean, it's been decades that this has been open. It seems to me there should be some prescriptive easement that would kick in, and you can't just willy-nilly close it because there was an incident like that.
And this question for you, Kent. I mean, you know the neighborhood quite well. I know it too. And what's the problem with going to Sepulveda, even though it may be inconvenient, but it's just a couple of minutes away? It's not like a mile and a half away or anything.
We were there yesterday, and we saw people using this gate. They could have used the Sepulveda gate as well. Every gate along this trail is important for access. If we're talking about creating a functional, viable transportation corridor. And again, if we close this gate, it's setting a precedent that other neighbors are going to certainly jump on to, because I would imagine this perception is wide that people would, just like it to go away. So that's my feeling about that.
Thank you. Thank you. No, not yet. Stephen? NC, you want to come up as well?
Stephen Box, Illuminate LA, Bike Riders Collective, Caltrans 7 Bicycle Advisory Committee. I'm on the board of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, and I'm a member of the LA Wheelmen. I have a couple of letters that were sent to me by folks that couldn't join us. The first one's from Eric Knudsen of the Center for Land Use Interpretation, who says, all the great cities of the world were founded on the banks of rivers. We need to do all we can to reconnect our city to our rivers, not restrict access. We need to treat our rivers as assets, not liabilities. In fact, it's this mentality of locking up La Bayona Creek behind gates and fences that actually makes the creek more dangerous. That's Eric Knudsen of the Center for Land Use Interpretation, which is right around the corner. He writes this on a fairly regular basis, I think 3 to 4 times a week as part of his commute. The next letter is from Jim Lamb. He's the president of the Bayona Creek Renaissance. And he writes, as the president, to Councilman Rosendahl, lighting, visibility, eyes on the creek, ways to get on and off the bike path, and attractive, people-friendly design all can be part of the solution. Locked gates can trap law-abiding citizens on one side or another and inhibit law enforcement, while more bike path users can help the area to be somewhat self-patrolling. Increased uniform patrols also could help. Such measures, he's an architect, by the way, such measures relate to a long-standing public space design approach which goes under the acronym of, well, it's an abbreviation, CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. The problems that have been experienced here happen everywhere. We simply can't gate them off and expect them to go away. There's a couple of opportunities here. The first is for us to develop and implement a design standard for our creeks and rivers. We have opportunities throughout the city. We have gated areas such as this. They don't help reduce crime. In fact, they actually protect those that are up to no good and make those that are out there using these facilities feel trapped or isolated. The second thing is, well,
I'll just finish it. You can say
the Pacific Division is actually developing a bike unit, the police department. There's an opportunity for them to put bikes on this path, which would be a great thing to do. Police officers on bicycles patrolling this area and the streets of that particular neighborhood. So there's opportunities for us to address crime. Locking the gate isn't one of them. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy Boggs. I'm a member of the Caltrans 7 Bicycle Advisory Committee, a member of the LA Wheelmen, and I'm also a member of the community. However, today I would like to speak as a pedestrian, not as a cyclist. Many people walk that stretch of the bike path. They don't only ride it. If we close down the entrances of the path, individuals, grandmas, kids who need to walk back and forth from school, and those that could be trapped will not be able to escape, just like that kid who got beat up. And the criminals will have very easy access to jump the wall and escape. We need to open up the river to make it visible to eyes of the neighborhood. Closing the gate will not prevent the gangs to jump the wall and the fence. Open, visible neighborhoods will discourage crime and make the path a pleasant experience. I'm against the proposal to close the gate. I personally would never walk the bike path, any of them, even the LA River path. I think it's dangerous because it is closed down. So as a woman, if I get attacked, if I see a gang, I have no way to turn back around and escape because I don't know where the next escape route is. The more we open up, tear down the walls, and open up the river to the visibility of the neighborhoods, the kids who live there, that will make it safe and visible, and the gangs will move away. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's our last public speaker.
Oh, good. Yeah, if I could, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask DOT to come on up on this one. And I'd also like, obviously, the bike coordinator, Michelle, to come on up and interact with what we've just heard.
Afternoon, Michelle Mallory, Department of Transportation. I'm the city's bicycle coordinator.
Mike Wino, DOT.
We've been meeting with Councilmember Rosendahl staff and members of the community on this for a number of months. I think we started in May 2007. We've listened to the community's concerns. Most of our concerns are very similar to those of the bicycle community. We are very concerned about bicyclists being trapped in this scenario. We have about the next exit either way, if we were to close this particular gate, would be a quarter mile in each direction. We looked at, one of the members of the community suggested we look at Sotel, which is actually the next street directly east. We did look at it. There's about a 15-foot grade separation between the roadway and the bike path. So nothing is impossible with enough money, but it would not be a simple or easy fix, and it would be a costly one to be able to engineer another solution over there. We do believe that if the gate is closed, the activity is going to continue. We think the gate will be jumped. We think the gate will be cut, and people will continue to use it. The wrong folks will continue to use it. What we think would be the best course at this point is give staff 60 days to come up with some sort of public policy regarding gate closures and how we should address this. And we can come back and develop some sort of public process to hold a public meeting with your office, as well as the LAPD and the neighboring community and the bike community can all get out and talk all at once.
Please.
I have nothing to add.
Well, let me say this. I don't want to see anybody hurt, period.
We agree.
And the neighbors have a legitimate complaint. Mm-hmm. And the bike riders have a legitimate complaint of wanting to continue to bike. I am not sold on the bike riders' position. I'm not. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to ask my colleagues at this point, other than whatever they want to say. And what I would like to do is have the neighbors that were just here with you, with the bicyclists, and pull out a map and come up with some options. Because I want to close the gate in front of their homes. I don't want to see their kids beaten up. And it's nothing to do with the bike rider. It has to do with the crime issue. And when the police give me a letter strongly saying they cannot police the area, I certainly agree with everybody's comment. We should have the cops on bicycles. They should be up and down there. And if we get a good commitment out of the LAPD, which I want them part of this group, okay? Get the LAPD Pacific Division to sit in the room, okay, and point out their concerns or what their solutions will be. If the LAPD say we will assign a bicycle cop 24/7 there, and we're going to be up and down, and we're going to do this and that, and the neighbors look at me with comfort, they're the ones I'm responding to, is their concerns. If I had a son that got beaten up there, I don't think I would be anything different than the parents that have come here and have come to my office. But golly, Kent, you know how much we love you and the bike paths and want to get the whole thing done. I don't want to destroy the energy of the bike riders, but I don't want to see these people hurt. So how about coming back in 60 days? With a collective discussion with LAPD, DOT, the bicyclists, and the neighbors, and then bring into it also the Delray Neighborhood Council. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to suggest, I think they should do it a little, only suggest
30
it
days?
30 days. I mean, it's daylight savings. You got extra hours to go out and look at it. And the other thing I wanted to ask, have you ever looked at the file that originated this bikeway?
We've looked at the plans, actually.
Do you know why they selected this location for an access
No,
point?
but I'm sure you will tell us.
No, I don't. I don't know. No, I don't.
don't.
I don't. But I think I would look at the file to see why. I know. I don't. But I do know this. That we do have on parks a sunrise to sunset ordinance. Mm-hmm. Okay? Sure. And the sunrise to sunset ordinance is implemented by Record Park sometimes, or the created Office of Public Safety, which Ms. Gruhl spearheaded. Maybe you could look to General Services, LAPD, because there are gate openers and closers in the city. And there were two parks that were the problem. One was in Hollywood, and one was in your district out there at the Delray Lagoon, where there was a parking lot where people wouldn't close it. Finally, once the city closed it on a regular basis, those who do need love and attention and recreation and non-negativism that goes with gang association would find a better way. Unless you have a regular opening and closing, it doesn't work. If you just close it, they can rip down the fences, then it becomes a problem on that. You also got to talk to the cyclists to see what if you went to Sotel, or what impact does it have if there's no access here. If you're just standing up for this, just access as a cyclist is, as many of you mentioned, I look at the issue is what makes sense. Does it make sense that you're on big boulevards to big streets? I do believe in bicycle boulevards, and if it's just a neighborhood street, I'd love to see it too. I want to get my family out there, daylight savings here, and see what you could do. Those are some options, but the biggest thing would be the sunrise to sunset, and check with the office. Gary Newton is the police, and there is some contract funding for who sweeps the bike path.
We are in the process of getting contractor.
Not Reckitt Parks anymore?
Not on Biona
On
Creek.
some, not on.
Not on Biona Creek. On others they do. Find out who that is and then establish it and then earmark it. The Los Angeles Police Department will never have the money to do what we would want them to do. And there won't be the numbers of people to ride on the bike path that you see in other cities until we make it safe that people, not just those who ride, and these are ardent riders here, but those who never thought about commuting on their bicycle, they feel safe. We have 800,000 feet of wires being stolen from our street lighting system that knocked out the L.A. River thing, but it makes people discouraged. Sunrise to sunset, even if it's past sunrise, because I think a commuter, a real ardent cyclist who rides into town to work, will find their way. But once daylight comes, you want everybody to get there. But you got to solve the neighborhood problem, because if we lose the neighborhood, then not just this area of the city, but other areas of the city where we're reclaiming the river, will have a tougher fight. And I support Mr. Rosendahl on this.
Yeah, these are formal walkways that are guided by state law. Is that not correct?
Formal walkways?
They're formal access transportation corridors that are guided by state law, aren't they?
I don't know that
I'm
they're
not
guided
sure.
by state law.
County Creek.
They,
And that's my question. Are we legally entitled to close these things once we establish them as public thoroughfares? That's a question for the city attorney.
Yeah, we obviously have not had a chance to take a look at the specifics, but I think that the due diligence that has been done so far indicates that the two decision makers would be the City of Los Angeles and County Public Works. So as long as those two entities agreed to close the gate, I think the legal authority to close it would be there. The policy questions, of course, are to you.
Thoroughfare to go to school or anything like that?
This is the top of
I
a
don't think so.
Bologna
I'm
Creek.
not sure. We'll check about school route.
I'm just saying you should add to your group the city attorney so that they can explore
Right.
the legal
Right.
elements to this. I
Yeah.
don't know whether there's
But we will
rules
check.
and findings that have to be made before you can shut it down. But
it is used as a pedestrian walkway, and you do see members of the community use it as a pedestrian walkway. I was out there on my bike yesterday with the cyclists who had asked me to attend. Council member's deputy was there as well. And I rode up from the beach, and, there are kids walking, dribbling their basketballs, going on to the parks further on up. So it is used as a public access point for pedestrians as well as bicyclists, transportation and recreational trips. The city attorney is correct. The ownership of the facility is LA County Public Works. It is a flood control channel.
So we got a permit from
We
them.
believe our understanding, because it is an old facility, this one's almost 40 years old, is that the cities that the facility goes through are maintained and operated by those cities. So we think we have the authority to close it. We probably don't have the authority to do any construction projects out there without a permit.
Right.
I hate to see facilities like this being lost to the community because it's basically saying we lost and the criminals win. So I would be more excited about a strategy to prevail and seeing how we could get the community to rally around Neighborhood Watch and other ideas to protect the open access and say no to the criminals.
I know. Just on the sunrise to sunset. Are there any sunrise to sunset? I know when it rains, you close Fletcher Drive Bikeway. We know that on the river.
Right.
Who orders that? Who could you do a sunrise to sunset? I think that's the
I was just going to
simplest
say, we
thing.
do, I have in my district
Yeah.
a
Your-
bridge.
yeah, your thing,
There was
yeah.
a bridge that was a problematic area in the evening part of time, and so General Services does come by and close that gate. There's another part in my district, which is a walkway from residential to a park and a school, and the neighborhood took responsibility of opening and closing that, and we were able to do that as well. And sometimes it's a pilot that you look at to see if it addresses the issue, and if it doesn't, go to the next step. But So, all right, so your recommendation is 60 days.
I would like to go back to 30 since Tom said 30 in this daylight savings. And I'd like to make sure
I think
Kent
the frustration
Strempel
of the neighbors
is
were
part.
there.
I want to make sure, Michelle, that Kent is part of it and the father whose son was beaten in that other neighbor who did spoke be part of the group with the LAPD and the city attorneys. I think Richard's point is very clear about the city attorney's office being there. It would be my hope that if the LAPD can have bicyclists and guarantee all that they say that in the meeting. If they're unable to say that, I would rather you find another location for a gate that is not in the face of these particular homes who have suffered through some real issues that are legitimate, and see if we can find. And if it costs money, then we need to address that issue as well. But that would be, for me, where I'm coming from, is to protect the neighborhood as well as to let the bikers enjoy the bike path. But
video camera?
not there. Or maybe there is issues that the police can suggest that gives comfort to the homeowners. Their comfort is my comfort, okay? And that is a key part of this play.
We spoke with LAPD officers before we ended up in a joint meeting between the two of us, and we had an indication that there are some problems in the neighborhood, not necessarily generated from the bike path. So they recognize, LAPD Pacific Division recognizes there are some ongoing issues out there that maybe they don't have the resources to develop. They have had an ongoing bicycle patrol that has dealt with some issues on the path over the course of the years. Generally, the rule of thumb with LAPD and their bicycle patrol is if they need officers in the cars, they pull them and put them in the cars. So their bike patrol numbers vary based on their manpower issues at the time.
Thank you. And I think having LAPD present there. So that'll be continued 30 days with instructions.
Get the senior lead in there.
Right,
Get the senior lead, too.
Item 8, because it's just an update from the last meeting. We'd asked them to come back. Howard Sunken, you want to testify first before we... Mr. Sunken.
Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Alarcon, good afternoon. I'm Howard Sunken, Senior Vice President of the Los Angeles Dodgers. I want to thank the Department of Transportation and the MTA for the meeting we had a couple weeks ago. I've read their report. I think what they have represented to you is largely accurate of what was discussed in the meeting. I appreciate their energy and their commitment to try to move this forward. However, what we as an organization are concerned about is that there doesn't appear to be a solution to the problem in the sense of working together to facilitate a result. What they're recommending is that we continue to communicate, but I think we need to work more to a time certainty. The season starts in 13 days. Advanced sales are substantially higher than they were last year. There's a great deal of excitement around the Dodger season that's about to start, and we would like to urge a consensus to be developed around how do we solve this problem. Again, without repeating what was indicated at the committee last month, we are the only stadium in America that does not have public transit. And in a city like Los Angeles, that seems somewhat ridiculous. And I don't know. I have a sense of frustration, Councilman, as to how do we get there quicker rather than slower.
If your requests are met, would it improve your chances of becoming champions?
If I thought it was that easy, I would say yes, Richard.
What was your question? I'm sorry.
If they will improve their chances of becoming champions.
Oh, champions. Okay. I'm sure that's going to happen. So.
Let's hope so.
Just like Bruins. Okay. Do we have representatives from the department who want to come up and MTA to kind of give us an update? Don't be shy. I think because, it was expressed by both of the council members that are adjacent to the stadium, their interest in finding some resolution to this as well. And I think the committee agreed with that. So that's our interest as to how do we figure this out to get public transit access to the stadium.
Jim Lefton from the Department of Transportation. As Mr. Sunken mentioned, we did have a meeting with Metro and CD1 on the 29th, 2 days after the Transportation Committee that we had, and we discussed various options for serving the stadium. What was originally discussed was possibly rerouting Metro service off of Sunset into Dodger Stadium, and some concerns were raised about the impacts that that would have on existing riders of the service as well as cost. One option that was discussed as a possible preferred option would be to run a shuttle off of Sunset Boulevard so that people that are on existing transit could transfer to the shuttle to get to the stadium without impacting riders that aren't interested in going to the stadium. We've done some very preliminary cost estimates of what that shuttle would cost if you were to run it over the entire season, every game, with approximately 10 minutes service. These are just real rough ballpark parameters, but look at in the neighborhood of about $200,000 a year to operate the service. The concern from Metro and LADOT both is that we are in a situation where we're having to look at reducing service because of existing budget shortfalls, and it was difficult for us to recommend funding using public dollars, funding shuttle service to Dodger Stadium. That's kind of where we left it. We agreed that we would continue to meet and discuss. We only had one preliminary meeting so far, but that was the outstanding issue that from Metro side and from LADOT side.
You had on one of the recommendations that came from CD1 was the modifying the existing Lincoln Heights, Chinatown, or Dash Pico Union Echo Park routes to serve Elysian Park as well as Dodger Stadium.
Mm-hmm. Those, as discussed in the report, the concerns were similar to modifying existing Metro service in that you would generally involve an impact to existing riders by taking the bus out of direction to serve the stadium and then return to the regular route. There's also a cost issue involved with that, having to add buses to maintain existing service. So the issues that we had for those options were similar to the issues that Metro had in terms of rerouting their service.
Well, and you mentioned hilly terrain, but big buses go up there all the time.
Well, the hilly terrain that we're referring to in the report, I believe, is the extension of the Pico Union service from where it currently terminates to get to Dodger Stadium. Not so much the shuttle service I mentioned to you before. That would not be an issue.
That would not be an issue. And did you look at the costs of the modification on the Dash?
We don't have exact estimates on that yet, but I would estimate that that would be greater cost than it would be to run the shuttle that I was mentioning to you before.
Okay.
Would it be possible to thinking outside the box, where would the parking facilities be if you were to create some kind of shuttle line?
The shuttle that was discussed in the meeting would be off of Sunset Boulevard at Elysian Park. So it basically would involve people.
There's not a whole lot of parking over there.
No, it's not intended to be a park and ride. It would be intended to.
It would be intended to connect to the existing Metro service on Sunset. There's about service every 6 minutes on Sunset Boulevard.
What's wrong with the idea of a park and ride?
Well, another option would be to run it from Union Station where there's parking available.
How about from the LA River?
You could find park and ride opportunities similar to the Hollywood Bowl to run service to Dodger Stadium too. There's a variety of options. It just involves cost. The shuttle is nice in the sense that it involves a very.
What about LA Zoo right up Riverside?
There are any number of possible park and ride lot opportunities. The advantage of the shuttle from Union Station,
and the revenue, the $200,000. I don't know which project you're speaking of, but whatever it is, are the Dodgers proposing to supplement that, or maybe get some of the high-paid Dodger players to kick in a portion of the salary?
Hey, come on now. What kind of fan are you there?
I'm a great fan, but I'm also a fan of the taxpayer.
Sure. Well, one issue that we have with running service, well, this is an issue that affects both Metro and LADOT, is if there are any sort of cost sharing where the Dodgers were to pay a portion of the cost, which I think is what you're asking, there are issues involving FTA. There's charter bus regulations that prohibit activity using buses, federally funded buses for charter bus type activities. So one of the limitations of using public buses would be that there would not be the ability for the sponsor of the service, in this case the Dodgers, funding any of the cost of the service if the public sector were to operate it. So there would not be the opportunity for the Dodgers to kick in half.
I think I would like to see a special just Dodger Blue trolley or something that would be unique and only used during 80 games of the year, whatever it is, and
90 this year.
That's with the World
90 this
Series.
year.
Good job.
I mean, It's not like we're going to China or anything, but it would be kind of cool and a unique feature of Los Angeles. But I do think that that the cost should be shared. And on the other hand, I don't know what kind of revenues the Dodgers are generating for Los Angeles that are
I think White Howard
probably
is
far,
Councilman,
far beyond the 200,000.
This is not about $200,000 for us.
Yeah,
This is about public transit to one of the great assets in Los Angeles. This is a public policy question. If I can put my old public policy hat on for a second.
I didn't know you had
Don't
one.
get crazy, Tom. And that's what's we think is integral to this site, to activating this site further. We've made some modifications in our parking system again this year, where we've added more parking, and the idea is to get people off the street, our community streets, which is something I've heard since Jamie and Frank McCourt bought the team, and when I went up to Dodge, started working for them. And this is also another way to facilitate less traffic. This is a public policy question. This isn't about $200,000 per se, because, as you're right, this is an expensive venue. We also contribute tens of millions of dollars to the taxes of this city and county, and a lot more in goodwill. So we're looking for a public-private partnership here. For $200,000 for the city to say that they have public transit restored to Dodger Stadium, I think that's a pretty successful outcome to
Yeah, it would
to
seem
this.
to me that this might even be profitable.
How did the last one, how was that funded, the one that?
That was funded by MTA and subsidized by the Dodgers, and it was only operated on, I believe, Saturday nights?
Friday nights.
Friday nights, thanks, Jim. And it was not successful because it was asking for way too much to happen. It was also closing lanes on Sunset, which caused other traffic delays. This is just connecting existing bus lines through a transit service into Dodger Stadium with a dedicated site for arrival and departure.
What if we did a general RFP and asked for ideas? Maybe the private sector could come up with something we're not thinking about.
That's a possibility. I mean, there might be sponsors that might be willing to fund the cost.
You could probably sponsor it all through
I mean,
advertising on the
yeah.
transit shelters.
Yeah, well, not only that.
I mean, on the buses.
The trolley buses themselves could be advertisement vehicles as well, and be very profitable for the groups that are doing it. So, I think, it would be a cool little feature for Los Angeles that I don't think we should give up on the idea at this point. I mean, it'd be really fun.
Is again, taking away the money aspect of it, if there's a way to, they're not funding directly, but a contribution is made through the DOT, and, I mean, it's not paying for that service necessarily. I mean, have we thought creatively, again, about a variety of ways that you would look at that, including advertisement or other items that, if you had a special bus particularly?
Well, I mean, we haven't had a meeting really to get to that level. We focus primarily on the service aspects and how it might operate. We could certainly have another meeting and talk about more of the financial aspects of it.
I think there is the intent and the passion here of, it does make sense for a major part. I mean, whether you're going to Staples Arena, which we don't own either, or you're going, again, that's a little easier because it's on a major thoroughfare. But there are important, Griffith Park, although going up to Observatory, there was a private shuttle. Was that a private shuttle or a city
That
shuttle?
was just an opening of the event, but then we finally got the MTA walked away from their job of providing transit up there years ago, and DOT came in to rescue it there.
But those shuttles
No editorial
Were,
there.
those shuttles were DOT buses?
The shuttles were a contract with Record Parks on that. But on this, I think what I just think your math is about $2,400 a day is what it would cost. I think there's a way. Richard mentioned trolley. It would be interesting to see what we could do if there was a RFP or something very quick to see who could do it. The question is, can we have because it's a short turnaround. You go from Elysian Park Drive at sunset into the ballpark to, let's say, Gate 5 and stop there, or would you circle the field? Would you circle the stadium?
It would go, we in the new inner ring road, which,
Right.
Council, when you came up the other day, I showed you, there's a bus carve-out area where it would pull it right in behind the left field pavilion, similar to what it did from 62 to 94.
And could they go out Scott, maybe, just to bypass that and
We
get
can
back?
exit Scott, that's
So there's
correct.
the potential there. I was involved with the hop-on, hop-off tour that just is instigated this last year in Hollywood, which goes Hollywood, like you see in New York, Chicago, and Washington, the double-decker buses there. We should probably look at this, and I think we should find a way to be partners with this, because there is no sidewalks to walk up. There's only one bus line, the 86, that runs on Riverside, which is a contract bus, not an MTA regular bus on Riverside. So you'd have to walk from Stadium Way all the way up the hill. I love the Art Henry. And then there's all the buses on Sunset. So we never really planned it right. But this is an opportunity where the Dodgers are reaching out to the city to say, hey, let's see what kind of sense we can make. And I know you got the downtown neighborhood short hop, but you could have the N neighborhood area short hop, have a Nash in there, or something. Come up with an idea.
All right.
Okay, bottom line from my end is, if we're the policymakers, it's a no-brainer. We should have public transportation to the stadium.
Thank you, Mr.
period.
Rosendahl.
And we just need to find a way to make it all happen and figure out the funding.
Okay, bottom line is on the parking lots on Stadium Way next to the Fire Academy. Who owns those lots?
We do, Mr.
Both of them?
Both sides. We actually have an easement from you on the west side.
You have an easement. So let's say if we took back the easement, not to cause you trouble, and we started charging parking, we could pay for it.
Yeah. Well, my attorney's not here to tell me if I can give you back the easement. But I also want to say, and I appreciate the work of Mr. Lufton and his staff. I also confirm that, yes, there are bike racks at Dodger Stadiums, and we want to encourage people, if they can't get there on public transit, to ride their bike.
We're going to have a ride bike there. And Mr. Reyes is very supportive of this effort here, which is so important.
I don't know when our next meeting is, but I think we want you guys to get back together here and see what we can do with Was CD 13 and 1 involved in that meeting? Okay. I don't see them here today.
I think CD1's here.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Didn't see in the back. I don't know if you have any comments.
I'm telling you, become a party bus.
Thank you, Susan. Okay.
Is it legal, Madam Chair, just to ask a question? If you had a hop-on and hop-off bus, that's a contract bus, could they interface with Sunset? Could they? Because now you allow them to operate in Los Angeles now. Could you have one of those buses that's not an MTA bus, but it's a contract bus that maybe we get some contract with that would run in and out of the stadium?
A DOT contractor? Or
No, somebody. I got a double-decker London bus, and I say to the Dodgers, I love the Dodgers, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to charge everybody $1 and something like that. You'd work it out, you'd figure it out, you'd let them stop at the curb?
we can look at working that out.
Okay, you'd make a right turn on a red light?
Okay, now that we're in the middle of baseball season, when can we get this done? I want to get it what was still
baseball,
playing.
it's basketball.
Baseball season starts 14 days from yesterday.
14 days from yesterday, so it's 13 days away.
That's correct.
So when can we get this in place?
Well, as soon as we figure out the financials, we'll be glad to work.
How about we report back to you in 30 days that we're almost there?
Yeah, get a good chunk from the baseball team.
Well, we'll have it at our next scheduled meetings.
Thanks, Bill.
Our next regular meeting would be on March 26th.
That's next week. No, so I'll have to
Correct.
look at that. Okay.
We'll figure.
All right, please.
You want me to
keep
call
us
hop
in the
on,
loop
hop
there.
off? What's that? The hop on London bus? Yeah.
We'll go back to item number
Thank you,
1.
Mr.
Thank you very much. We're
Sunken,
holding that
is
in
it?
committee.
Madam Chair, are we holding this in committee then?
Yes, we're holding
Thank
that.
you.
Item number 1 is the DOT report relative to the West LA Rail Corridor and connectivity analysis.
What's up there? It's like going to the cathedral. I'm an athlete, so I love that architecture.
Good afternoon. Sean Hayuri with the Department of Transportation. As you recall, a few months ago we came back and requested permission to work with your staff to consolidate a number of motions that your office had put out for West LA and West Side for livable boulevards, rail systems, and transportation enhancement. And with your direction, we worked with Krieg and our staff, and we came up with a consolidated report that would basically address all the concerns that you had put out in all those motions into one report. Now, with your concurrence, we'll take this to full City Council, and upon approval, we'll issue an RFP to hire a consultant that would tackle all these issues under one umbrella. We don't expect one company, one consulting firm to have all the expertise, but we would like it to all be coordinated through one company for better results.
Yeah. I want to say I am absolutely delighted with what you've done with my staff and grabbing these motions, putting it together. My biggest thing is timing. I'm tired. We got to accelerate everything in life. That's why we grabbed the money out of a pot, threw it at you. If you need to hire more staff, I know you're going to have a transportation engineer associate position in LADOT will serve as the city's lead, providing consulting, oversight, and review, coordinating the other city departments, attending public workshops, and preparing staff reports. Thrilled.
Great.
And you move quickly on this. You know, we got the money. I want to spend the money. I want to get that stuff going sooner rather than later.
As soon as it clears council, we are ready to roll.
Praise the Lord. Thank you.
I have a question just real quick on that one. I know there are consulting services that you are going to have. This individual who's being hired that Mr. Rosendahl mentioned, is that they're specifically for this purpose, won't be used for any other projects, correct?
Yes, we'll concentrate on this effort only, but obviously, when this job is done, that individual will tackle other issues because we do have the coastal corridor specific plan update and we do have the West LA
Funded
coastal.
Under the dollars associated with that.
Right, these funds are coming from those specific
The only-
plans.
and
anyway.
this is really important, and I support it wholeheartedly. I just want to ask on the precedent-setting nature of hiring a DOT staff member that's hired by special funds.
Right.
Is that there a point in time where then they're no longer available for funding from those special funds? What happens to that individual? And is it then general fund funded?
That individual who would be hired will continue to work on administering the West LA and coastal specific plans, which is where these monies are coming from. So this is a long-term effort. It's not a
He's
few
committed
months.
to use that funding for now until no
That's
general
right,
fund.
until the
Right.
projects are done.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions on this? Yes, Mr.
No,
Parks?
the only thing I
Is that
was-
the question you were going to ask too?
Yeah, well, similar.
Similar. Make
Because
sure
one of
it's
the things
not
with the shortfall in Prop A and C, and from the last several times we've checked on some of these projects, the mitigation funds in 5 and 11 are extensive. And
Yes.
so it would be very helpful as we move forward on these mitigation funds, which were created because of the density and the construction, be basically put in play rather than Prop C and A when available.
Right, and in this instance, they are using those funds.
I mean, for the study, what I'm talking about, when we get into
Other items.
implementing the study, it would be very helpful for the city if some of those mitigation funds could be part of that discussion.
We're all for that as time goes on. But the bottom line is, we want to move these 5 projects forward now, and we're thrilled about you getting it together to the degree where we can actually then have benchmarks and timetables and report backs and see things done.
We're excited to start too.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So
Approve the DOT recommendations.
we'll approve the DOT recommendations. Okay. Next item?
Item number 2 is the DOT report in response to Grove Park's motion.
I'm sorry, sorry, Mr. Sachs, I apologize. Mr. Sachs on item number 1.
You were napping at one point.
You woke up for that one, though, then I
I woke
saw
up
your
for this
hand
one,
go.
though. Good thing.
I got it.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much. Very quickly, because I can't get any kind of response from MTA or the County Board of Supervisors. Please define what the West Los Angeles Rail Corridor is. Is it the new part of the Expo line? Will it be the purple line? Will it be the red line? Will it be a connection to the green line? Is it any of that, all of the above, some of the above, part of that, or something different?
If I could, I just want to answer it real quickly. It's the West Los Angeles Rail Connectivity and Linkage Study. It's the Lincoln Boulevard Mobility Improvement Study. It's the Sepulveda Boulevard Major Investment Study. It's the West LA Livable Boulevard Study and the Green Line Extension, all wrapped into one.
Okay, so they're all basically north-south routes.
There are all kinds of different routes, yeah, but
Well,
north-south.
Lincoln, Sepulveda are both
right,
north
right,
and
right,
south pretty
right,
much,
right.
and the green line is pretty much going to be a north-south route. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That's our
Thank you very
dream.
much.
We hope to make it a reality.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe before we go on item number 2, Mr. Sachs and Sun Yun Yang would like to speak on item number 2. Would you like to wait till after the report? Okay. Ms. Yang, you want to wait till after the report or speak first? Okay.
There you go with that idea.
That was a good one. DOT and MTA like to come up to the table? Thought I'd try.
Good move.
Hi.
Hi, how are
I'm
you?
Phil Aker from the Department of Transportation Transit Bureau. We prepared the report on the service cuts that Metro is proposing to make in June 2008. And the big picture is they're reducing service because of an overall budget deficit. They're proposing to cut 215,000 revenue service hours, or 2.8% of the total Metro bus operation. And they're doing this for two reasons. The first one is the overall deficit that Metro faces. And the second is to complete implementation of the rapid bus program. That's 6 new rapid bus lines and the augmentation of service to 3 existing rapid bus lines. As we described in detail in the report, there's a series of steps. MTA produced a list of proposed cuts. There was a public hearing in each one of the service sectors and one over at headquarters. And then the staffs of each one of the service sectors have considered the proposed changes, and they've come back with a revised report, in many cases eliminating some of those cuts. So it's not quite as draconian as
the original proposal.
As the original proposal. Then, based on the reports of the individual planners in each one of the service sectors, the service sector governance councils have had hearings. Last one was last night, or yesterday afternoon, and they have weighed in, and they've eliminated eliminated some of the cuts, or stretched out the time before the cut is made for a substitute service to be added. So that's kind of our analysis. Actually, all last week there were sector board meetings, and so we haven't pulled together yet the results, what the bottom line is. But one thing that we did do is we circulated the original proposals to each one of the council offices, tried to get some kind of an idea of the hot items, the hot lines, and we'll be reporting back individually on what happened at the sector board. Now, this isn't really the end of the line, because the whole program goes now to the recommendations of the sector boards go at least in part to the MTA board. Now, technically, the MTA board of directors is responsible for Tier 1 service and rapid bus service, but in reality, since they've created the sector boards, they're responsible for everything. So the process isn't really finished until the whole set of recommendations goes to the Metro board.
And your recommendations, I'll let MTA speak, sorry, I know, and that the message we send about certain selected routes that we would want to ensure did not get cut.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead of MTA here, but our concern is fundamentally what Metro is doing is they rank all of their service in terms of performance. And what they're saying is we're going to take the lowest performing lines and cut service, eliminate those lines. And on top of that, they're going to take frequency on some more heavily used line and pull a bus out here or a bus out here, which is a thinning process.
Right.
But it's the first part, the elimination of the lowest performing lines. And what we were saying was that there ought to be two criteria for those kind of cuts. First of all, is it a low performer? But secondly, does it provide geographic coverage in an area where there is no adjacent service?
Right.
And what we're concerned about is that if they take resources by doing cuts geographically, isolating people who are now further and further away from a transit line, and they redistribute those hours into more frequent service on heavily used routes, aren't we really ending up with a truncated system where people who use heavy routes get more frequent bus service, but other people get no bus service at all? And
so, just so I want to, you mentioned the line 168, line 175, line 220, and line 634, which go to schools, businesses, and so forth, that you, as priority ones, that you would want the department, MTA, to consider not canceling.
And those were just the first ones from the San Fernando Valley sector. And
the other sectors met?
They've all met now.
Okay.
The last one last night. San Gabriel Valley was the last night.
Okay. So would the MTA like to?
Good afternoon. My name is Conan Chung. I'm new to Metro. I'm the new Deputy Executive Officer of Service Planning and Development.
Great.
Basically, just to augment what Phil said, we did have a set of public hearings, and we had a large list of service cuts. And while the lines were identified based on the performance or underperformance of the lines, it was evident through the public hearing process that a lot of these services are very important to specific markets. And so based on that, for example, we received about 1,000 public comments through the public hearing process. Once that was done, the service sector staff went back, revisited all of the proposals that were placed on the public hearing list, and went through and changed a lot of them and modified them to try to accommodate as many of these large issues as possible. And what we saw through the past week when each of the sectors met, and each of the 6 sectors have already met, regarding the revised list, is that we had roughly about 40 people come out in total on the service changes. And so that's a big difference between having 1,000 people come out versus having 40 people come out. And even then, we made additional modifications, or the sector governance councils made additional modifications based on comments at that time. To give you an idea of what we had before versus after, our original list included 18 routes to be fully discontinued. And in addition to that, about 19 partial discontinuations, which is either cut a section off of it or a particular time of day or day of week. By the end of this process, we're only looking at 6 full route discontinuations, so 6 out of the 18, and about 12 partial discontinuations. So when we start looking at the 6 full route discontinuations, a majority of those have other alternatives. Either they're duplications in service, or there is probably about a half-mile walk to get to an alternative.
And that just to pick on one specific line, the 168 that runs along Lassen between Chatsworth and Sylmar, the original proposal was to kill that line and then say, well, people could either walk out of that ride shed, they could either walk north to Devonshire, or they could walk south to Plummer. And it's a half-mile walk either way. And what we were concerned about is, I mean, for somebody who is physically active, a half-mile walk is probably good exercise. But a lot of the people who use public transportation are not able to make those distances. So we were just hoping that Metro would be, as Conan said, sensitive to this area of geographic coverage, because after all, Metro is the primary public transit provider in the city of Los Angeles. It's not DOT. And we're a niche, or a kind of a specialized service, but we look to Metro to operate the main service within the city. Now, if Metro is going to move away from that type of service, then for us to assume so many of these local routes, you know, our budgetary situation and our Prop A budget, I mean, it's one thing to wish that we could assume routes, but it's another thing to be able to financially assume them.
Is your recommendation that is part of this, because your last report was dated March 7th, does that March 7th report take into consideration what the sectors have recommended and
No.
the changes in the proposed changes?
No.
Okay.
No.
So when do we think we would know that? Because I think we would like to make our voices heard prior to it going to the board. I don't know when the date is that the board is meeting.
The board meeting date for the Tier 1 and Metro Rapid services is April 24th.
So I think we want to make sure our voices are heard prior to that. When do you think that we would be able to have some greater data? Because I know we have some potential letters being drafted that would share the concerns, those that I listed, for example, as just some of them. But if that's out of date and we need to move to the next level, what's the timing that either, one, we can move this forward to council that says we're going to make some adjustments on our comments as we get to the city council, or we can have it come back to committee in a next week or a following week that we will have that information.
The MTA board, they're having a report at their next meeting, which is next Thursday. That would be
Correct.
the final decision, but I think to have the city weigh in at that point would be helpful.
Correct. Next Thursday at our board meeting, we're going to have a discussion on the Director Burke's response to her motion, and we're also going to add to that an update on the proceedings from the Service Sector Governance Council meeting. So we should have the final list by then, and we'll certainly share it with.
Well, is there
LAC.
a scenario where we take, that we get kind of some of that information and have this go to council prior to next Thursday and give a preliminary feedback?
Yeah, I would recommend the committee do that.
Okay. So let's, I will let you all ask your questions, but that would be my suggestion, is that we may not know all the answers today, but between now and the time we go to council, which I don't know when this is scheduled, but should be scheduled prior to next Thursday, that we have probably an amendment that will say, here are the ones we're concerned about, and have that discussion in council. So that would be, and then I'm going to start down here and go back.
Let me ask Maria, would this also be going to the operations committee, or is it just
No,
going?
it's just
well,
going to the board.
To the board.
Yes.
I'm going to give this to Nancy.
Mr. Allen?
I just wanted to ask DOT, is there any way that you could break this down, council district by council district?
Thanks.
Sector by sector, but I don't think we could do it by council district.
So, I mean, I would encourage the transportation deputies for every council member to hone in on their particular
The department,
area.
you should be able to identify which ones are in the districts. I mean, you can do the sectors, but you would be able to say, this is a line that goes through Mr. Alaquin's district and mine. So, yes,
Oh.
they can.
Okay.
They will.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of hard, because you have to, I was looking at this one line, 394, and it says it's going to stop at Sun Valley, well, they're canceling service, but it has a replacement, 794, but 794 only goes to Sun Valley,
Only goes to
so.
Only
that's-
goes, the idea was to have rapid from downtown to the city
Right.
of Burbank, and then there would be,
I
would
thought,
not
I
be
thought the
rapid.
rapid was going down Lancashire,
There's another rapid that goes on Lancashire
all the way
to Silmar.
down San Fernando Road then?
Well, it goes north,
There-
hooks up with San Fernando Road, and then goes north into Silmar.
Lancashire.
But the problem is that
But
there's
there's
a
another one
gap
that goes all the way down San Fernando Road, to Burbank?
from Burbank to downtown. There's a gap in the middle.
Right, and that's more than a half-mile walk.
Oh, way more.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, there's
I know.
local
I've
service
done it.
in that section, but a person would have to use the rapid, transfer to a local, and then transfer back to another
Yeah, well, it's a
rapid.
little complicated, because then I went over here to line 94, and that replaces the segment that's from Sun Valley to Silmar, but it goes to Olive Hospital.
correct.
So it's a little complicated if
And,
to the extent possible, if we could get DOT analysis. And I'm also thinking that the outlying areas are probably having more changes than the inner areas. I could be wrong, but maybe it works in reverse, but I'd just like to get a better sense of my district for
Okay.
one, but I think all council members would like to have it for their district. Because we're going to get the questions when we go to
Right.
the community meetings.
Thank you. Before I call up Mr. Rosendahl, just have a line item on the school service cuts. Just print them out, especially the 177, so council members know you are transforming from traditional school services that you're quitting because of this federal law. 175. 177 is the old RTD's bus line to Dodger Stadium. I'm sorry, I had a brain drain. All right, there.
Is on your mind.
Bill Rosendahl, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Alarcon 100%. I do need a breakdown of my district, and as some of you know, I've been asking for a rapid bus on Venice Boulevard for quite a while. And there's just no doubt in my mind that I could walk out of my house and go to the corner of Centinela and Venice and get on a rapid bus and come downtown. So I'm looking forward to MTA as it goes forward with new routes, that they look at Venice Boulevard, which, my God, turn of the century was the red car. It is a boulevard, and it can do many things as a boulevard that streets can't do. But it certainly can handle and absorb in a very effective way a rapid bus. We also want a rapid bus to be on Lincoln Boulevard. And we're even, if the possibility exists, on Sepulveda Boulevard. And I just throw them out as part of the discussion as we go forward. As you well know, the 11th District is totally gridlocked, and one way out of gridlock will be rapid buses so that people like me can come downtown and actually take the bus within the time frame that makes a lot of sense to do it. So we look for those report backs, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to be asking for that rapid bus on Venice Boulevard. Any thoughts on that process?
Art, you want to build this one?
Art used to live in Mar Vista. Then he got fed up with it and moved to Hollywood because he couldn't take it. No,
I think it's because the councilman who represents Hollywood, he moved to Hollywood. Who's his councilman there?
Either way, I won. I was in two great council districts.
All right, good.
There you go. Say what a sharp one.
Very good.
Arthur Henry, Metro
You don't have to
Government
kneel to
Relations.
us, Art. We do know you appreciate us.
Yes, and
We love you.
yes.
No homage
As,
here.
as I shared before, the original program is being implemented as designed, and as additional funds become available, Metro is interested in expanding the rapid bus program, and Venice is a high priority corridor. And I can tell you, there's been discussions already about that at high levels at the MTA at Metro about Venice being a corridor really would be a good rapid corridor.
Great.
Matter of funding at this point.
I can't believe it. I've never heard that before, Venice being the rapid corridor.
There you go.
I'm kidding. I've heard you every week. Any
Thank you,
other
Art, for
questions
that.
before we take public
Thank
comment?
you, Art, for the
Let me
good
just
job
add-
you did.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Parks.
Let me just ask from LADOT. One thing I just have never been able to get a clarity on, what role do you play in the sense of MTA initially recommending the cuts and or before they go to the regional community review? What role, if any, do they call you to talk about what their plan is? Do you find out about it when the public finds out? Just what happens?
We find out when the public finds out about it. Thank you. There's not there's not coordination in terms of, probably the only case where there has been some coordination is where we have a duplicative route or a close-by route.
But I mean, that's what I was always concerned with, is that they do that not knowing whether it impacts the LADOT service or whether in concert there could be a view of a alternate plan, being that we're constantly picking up the slack.
Well, when Metro started on the Metro Connections program, there was discussion about Metro moving from local service to regional service and high-frequency service. And at the time, the term was service to be assumed by others, either by municipal operators or an agency like LADOT.
But that was to be followed by funds, though.
That's it. And the key ingredients would be capital funding, operating funding, and some sort of a shared pass agreement.
Okay.
And
let me ask you, do you play or does the department play a role in the actual governance council meetings and when the community's in discussing those issues, that we're getting our input into those discussions?
In one case that I can think of, I actually testified at the San Fernando Valley Governance Council on a specific issue that involved downtown Dash.
Okay. Is there, let me ask you, Rita, is there a reason why we don't take that very active role in that regional discussion, the governance?
I don't know if there's a reason why we don't, but it's their jurisdiction that we would have input on how it impacts. We don't own their pocketbook, so
Yeah,
they
but-
own their pocketbook,
Yeah.
so they would have to have jurisdiction on how they see their service impacting their pocketbook, how it impacts us.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I'm concerned about is that they're making decisions just as they talk about, connections, metro connections, that they're saying someone, anonymous soul, are going to pick up this service. Well, it's pretty clear who they're talking about. It's just that there's no money or infrastructure to go with it. What I'm worried about is that we get these at MTA and people come in, and last year it was the 442, where there was a great deal of discussion about stopping a line, and where people then, instead of having a direct route to downtown, they had to get off at Manchester and go up an elevator and get on the bus on the freeway. Well, the problem is you never quite knew what was going to meet you on the stairway. And so these are things that would appear that when we're talking about LA City residents, that if there are options that, particularly if there's services that they're expecting that you are either going to pick up or that are going to impact some of your service, that we'd be a vital part of discussion along with the community to say, this is not a good idea. We've gotten a couple of letters, and it's kind of cavalier in the report. It says some of these services are going to be stopped, and it's only a half a mile walk. Well, the problem is people say at 3 in the morning and 4 in the morning, it's a little longer. And so the issue that we're running across is that what's a half mile walk for some could be a real calamity for others. And so I just would like to see if there's some way that we could work with MTA so that when they start this semi-annual process, that they're bringing you into the loop and giving us some ideas, because they're actually, I'm guessing, but I would think that most of the residents that show up at these meetings are within your service area in some fashion, if it's on the South Bay and I guess on the West, maybe not the Inland Empire. But I would just like to see if there's some way we could play a role, because I've been to a couple of them. They're very insightful. They're folks that ride those buses that know the lines by name and number. They know them better than maybe the operators do, but they clearly understand the operational impact of being left off at this corner and not another. Or a half mile walk may make me miss my next connection that then puts me on the street for an hour instead of 15 minutes.
Well, I think that's what you see as the result of the department, Phil and Jeff and some of his staff, being so intimately involved with those recommendations once they come back.
Yeah.
And then we can relate to those things that MTA has, in fact, made a recommendation on how they impact us in the long run, very much as we've done here, and try to keep up with the process.
Yeah.
And they've been very cooperative with us to come over and meet with us and to have discussions even prior to coming back. Because I've asked them to come over, and we've gone over there, and so we have ongoing meetings with them now that give us more insight to how that will impact us. But at the end of the day, both of us look at our wallets and realize we want 2 gallons of gas and we only have $5.
Yeah. Okay. But let me just throw one thing out.
How to stretch that so that we.
And I understand.
And something will give, something we'll have to give, but what's the best alternative is what it is that we're trying to come up with.
Okay. And one of the reasons I mentioned the governance is because the way the MTA cuts the line, and I may miss this, but it's Tier 1 comes to the board, which are the rapids. They have to review them, but they rely on the governance councils to do all of the local cuts. That's where the input is really given, and if we're not a part of it, then it offends the governing councils when the board has to dip into their work like we did with 442 and say, I understand you've gone through this process, but we're going to change it at the board. The real decisions made on a probably 80% plus of the routes are made at the governance council.
My understanding, even when talking with MTA, though, that there have been situations where the MTA board has had to make some.
Oh, yeah, it happens, but again, the way it's set up is supposedly the governance council, has some say. But that's where I.
think several of the governance councils said don't cut anything. Okay. I don't think that's not the answer. That they can cut because we know something has to be cut if they're going to.
But the thing is, I think it may have to be cut, but not maybe in the service. They may have to cut elsewhere within MTA budget. But what we're saying is that, does it have to be in the service level?
I'll let the MTA respond, but I think that's what we want to be able to say before they go next week. So we'll be asking you before it goes to our council meeting. And again, we'll make sure we know the date of that. I know Jaime would like to, maybe if you could give up your seat for Jaime.
Madam, I have to, Chair, I have to leave for another meeting. I thank you on that.
Thank you.
But I reserve the right to challenge anything in full council.
Got it.
Yes. May I say
Just a
something,
quick-
just before, based on Rita's comments, I'm with Councilman Parks. I think the issue is raising the level of understanding, where DOT is in a much better position to provide alternatives, options, considerations that people in the community might not even think about. And so to weigh in at that level, the Governance Council might be able to propose something more realistic than no cuts. And so I absolutely concur, and I think we should weigh in wherever we have the opportunity to.
Thank you. Before you let me just let MTA respond, and then if you know, okay, go ahead.
Jaime de la Vega, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Parks, my suggestion would be that our office work with you. I think the way to formalize this on the MTA board side is to have the MTA board direct MTA staff to affirmatively consult with LADOT and the other municipal operators before they formalize their recommendations to the governance councils, to give the city staff and therefore the council an opportunity to see those in advance. I think that would probably be an appropriate process, which would ensure that DOT then also has access to the data and the recommendations in advance. I mean, obviously, MTA staff has worked very cooperatively with DOT in the past, but just to formalize that communication trail to also give council adequate time to look at the information, because not everybody on the council sits on the MTA board.
Just to help alleviate some of the concerns, the council staff do work fairly closely or very closely with the municipal operators and LADOT as a service change comes out and is impactful on both departments. In fact, at a few of the council meetings, what I saw were people from, let's say, the city of Pasadena, for example, yesterday at the San Gabriel Valley service sector meeting. When there was a decision to make a change on one of the routes, one of the options was to have the city pick up a piece of it. And there was discussion within the meeting that said, okay, we're not going to cut this unless the city picks up this piece. And please direct staff to work with the city to come up with an alternative so people don't get stranded and people know, what bus is out there when they book out of the station. So there really is this give and take and back and forth between our sector staff, us at MTA headquarters, and the various transportation providers within the region.
Thank you. If we just take our public comment cards now, Sung Yoon Yang and Arnold Sachs.
Good afternoon, committee. Sun Young Yang from the Bus Riders Union. I'm here today to urge the City Council and members of this committee to urge the MTA to reject the service cuts proposal on the next MTA board meeting, as well as through an overall official letter sent by the City Council. The service hours that are being cut right now is a system-wide cut of a net cut of almost 415,000 hours, including December's cut. Including next year's cut and the cuts that were made in 2007, this totals about 663,000 hours of bus service cuts. That's about over 50% of what the Bus Riders Union has won in the last 10 years to the consent decree. Even if only some of the cuts are made, whether it's 663,000 or 300,000 hours, there are significant adverse impact on bus riders. Bus riders who are 80% living in the city, who not only live in one district, live and work in one district, but Councilmember Alarcon, whether a lot of bus service gets cut in your district or not, many of bus riders in your community also need to travel county-wide to go to Long Beach, to get to jobs, and so cuts made in other districts will also impact overall mobility and access of our residents to be able to go to school, jobs, and healthcare. And so I would like to just raise a couple of points. What MTA was saying about, there are many of these bus lines are being cut because there's parallel service, alternative service. In reality, some of these service cuts are going to force bus riders to take 3-4 transfers, extend 20 to 30 minutes to an hour of their commute every day. Or what used to take them to take one bus ride, one fare to get to, now they'll be forced to pay extra fares to get there. So we want to really point out that a lot of these cuts that are being made don't. Many of the riders don't have alternative service, and that the
conclude.
Yeah, and that these service cuts are very budget driven. The agency's own standard of high productivity lines are very, very skewed, and we would like to once again clarify that the rapid service that's being implemented under the consent decree must happen as an expansion, not as a replacement of local service. And so we feel that MTA, in its essence, is violating even that stipulation right now.
Thank you, Ms. Ng. Mr. Sachs.
Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Very quickly, let's see. We start with the deficit that MTA is facing, but they're implementing gating to capture a 5% fare evaders. When actually it's going to be used for destination pricing, like they use zone pricing on busing. The rapid service that they implement, low-performance rapid lines, are they cut through the thinning process that was Alec talked about. And the thinning process, does that occur on the subcontract lines, which MTA doesn't really control? They provide the buses and the schedule, but I know from experience that lines get thinned out, high ridership, high-volume lines get thinned out because the time it takes for the bus driver to complete that route puts them in overtime, and that's the cost to the subcontractor who's providing the drivers, and they don't want to pay it. So they'll thin that line out and put a line in when there's no ridership, but overall will show the same amount of bus lines for the contract. Heard about fuel. How many buses are still using gas versus propane and alternative fuels, and what's the cost of the propane right now? I'd like to know, or could it be found out, how many MTA transit housing projects are going on right now, and why is MTA so focused on housing? I can understand them having a property, but they could sell the property, use the money for funding, use the funding that they would get so they wouldn't have to cut lines. And the city's use of the Quimby funds. I brought this up at a river meeting and was told that the Quimby funds are tied into parks through a state legislature. Well, state legislature laws can be changed, and the Quimby funds that are being generated by the new houses and new condominiums could and should be used to help transportation issues. Thank you for your time and your answers.
Thank you very much. I think our instructions. Oh, what?
Mr. Rosendahl, just so you know, be careful what you wish for. Venice. I think they're going to do a rapid line on Van Ness.
Not Venice.
Thanks.
So our instruction is we're going to move this item forward with to council, and that prior to that, the DOT is going to provide to us with the assistance of MTA what the latest plan is and comments that we can be able to provide prior to their next Thursday meeting.
In that case, then, March 26th would be your last day for council to put this forward.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Set it forth then.
Okay. Next item is item number 3.
Item number 3 is a DOT report relative to Phase 2 of the Wilshire Boulevard bus only lane.
Good afternoon, council members. We are pleased to report that we are making significant progress on this project. FTA has given us preliminary...
Me up on that one. Keep going.
FTA has given preliminary approval for a $23 million grant to go into effect in fiscal year 2009, which would be October 2009, for the end-to-end bus lanes that the council has approved twice in 2007. However, as part of this process, we need to do some environmental work, a little bit of environmental assessment, and today we come to you with a recommendation to contribute, along with MTA, $200,000 from each agency to contribute to this year-long effort for public outreach and environmental assessment. And that is detailed in your report.
Yeah, good afternoon. Kang Hu with LADOT. We would like to request the language to be changed slightly, just the technical terms. The idea is we're going to contribute $200,000 from our local property funds, and MTA will come up with another $200,000, and they have graciously agreed to take the lead in doing the environmental assessment. They will be hiring a consultant, and as a matter of fact, they're in the process of doing that. But we need to transfer $200,000 from our Prop C funds, Transportation Grant Fund Work Program, and transfer such funds to MTA for NEPA CEQA environmental assessment, which includes a technical analysis and public outreach.
And where would that $200,000 be? I mean, Prop C, but is it from a specific project or the general?
It's coming from the Grant Fund Work Program. Every year we allocate monies to match with the grant fund we receive from outside sources, including MTA's Culver project. So I've checked with our administrative staff. The money is available for $200,000.
And I think what we need to do is identify the account number. So what I would recommend is if the committee would approve the essence of what he was saying, providing the money, and then we'll come up with the exact language for the council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have the account number here. I can just give it to you afterward.
Work on, get the
Yeah.
language.
Okay. And what does this do to the timeline? Because I know our speakers, and I know Bill and I, and Mr. Parks, but even before, and I know Mr. Alacon probably is a somewhat new member on this committee, but would agree that the expedition of this, moving it as quickly as possible, and the concern was about the environmental and what that would mean. I mean, we're very excited about the $23 million, but how are we going to move this quickly to begin our implementation?
Well, I believe we're going to start the environmental clearance process as soon as possible. That's going on right now, the process to hire a consultant. We expect that it'll take about 5 months to complete that first stage, which will put us...
And what does that mean if you're a bus rider or you're on Wilshire, you want to know? So when will a first leg of that be available? When, again?
Okay. We
within-
expect this whole process to be completed from 1 year from today, essentially. And at that point, we would be able to go forward with either the project or some modification of the project as approved by council.
The federal funding will not become available until October of this year, and it may be delayed for 3 to 4 months. So generally, the federal dollars will probably be available in the beginning of 2009, and that's the time when we will be almost ready after the environmental assessment to proceed with the design and construction. We have a representative from MTA.
We have questions, we'll ask them on that, and particularly, I don't know if my colleagues, before we go to public comment, have
Yeah,
any questions.
I just first want to say, when it was told to me the other day that they had to do an environmental study, I was taken aback because I want to really get this bus-only lane yesterday. I mean, it is as critical as anything we do in this city for rapid. And I know the mayor wants to do the subway to the sea. Hallelujah to him, but I want to get it on the ground first, and we can get that done lickety-split. So is there any way to condense that environmental study to 6 months rather than a full year from now, or is that impossible? Because the sooner the better. I mean, we've had it with the gridlock, and I know people in my district would love to be on a bus-only lane on Wilshire. And I've become a bus rider, you know what I mean?
Sure.
What do you think? Can we do it in 6 months if we?
I think that decision needs to be made at a higher level.
Yeah, Councilman, I think it depends also on the amount of impact that bus lane will have.
Of course.
And the kind of mitigation measures that we have to come up with.
Yes.
And we will certainly accelerate as much as possible. If the environmental impact can be mitigated, then the process will go forward very quickly. But there's another process that we have to do, which is the public outreach and public hearings, and that we cannot really omit. And that process we need to spend time on that
I
process.
totally agree with both of that, what you said, and obviously you couldn't give me an answer today. But if you could somehow think of it as a 6 month rather than a year and give us a report back in a month and tell us exactly what the timeline would be, assuming this money transfer can be done, I'd be most grateful.
Sure, we'll do that.
We're very anxious to get this moving, and if there's anything that we can do to expedite, we definitely want to have it. Okay, so we're going to go to our public speakers. We are just going to go with 1 minute on each because we have a potential of losing quorum fairly soon. We've been here a couple hours, so on a special day. So if I could ask the first two, Stephen Box and Lizette Lazo. Following those two individuals would be NC Box and Jackie from the Bus Riders Union.
Hey, Village Nation.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisette Lasso, and I'm a student at Cleveland High School in the San Fernando Valley. Currently, we are on spring break and the alumni of the BRU Spring Break Take Action program. I'm here to commend you for your leadership in moving the Wilshire bus-only lanes forward and urge you to adopt a recommendation before you today. My main message and that of my fellow peers is that we would like Wilshire bus-only lanes to happen as soon as possible. MTA's plan for the second phase of implementation is now scheduled for 2026, and that is too long. Please continue to set the example. I and we are deeply invested in this project happening because we want a network of bus-only lanes throughout the entire county reaching as far as South LA and the San Fernando Valley. The further that this project is delayed, the further that quality of transportation is delayed in the valley. The further this project is delayed, the further that reducing auto use is delayed and reducing pollution and global warming. Once again, please figure out how to make the Wilshire Bus-Only Lanes project happen as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for spending your summer or your spring break with us.
Can I ask, was that the connection to the valley that?
Yeah.
You're concerned about Wilshire?
Yeah. Because it'll serve as an exemplary model for throughout, so it could permeate throughout the whole city.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Microman.
Who do you know?
Stephen Box, bike activist and member of Green LA. Here to encourage you to do whatever you can to demonstrate the political will to make it competitive to take a bus. I ride my bike throughout the city. I also jump on the bus to make it work when I'm in a hurry. So from coastal San Pedro to Sylmar to Eagle Rock, I jump on the bus. But unfortunately on Wilshire, it slows me down, and I only average 14 miles an hour. So to go from Hollywood down and then over on Wilshire until I get to Santa Monica Boulevard, I'm beating the bus. We need to make it competitive, and we need to give the Metro priority positioning on Wilshire Boulevard. Please do whatever you can. I believe in you. I'm looking forward to your success here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. NC Box and Jackie, followed by Monty Maribel and Francisca Portas.
Hi, my name is NC Box, and I'm just want to make it very short. I'm supporting this project, and thank you so much for considering to make it very quick. And the environmental impact study, if it could be as short as possible, because we already know that all over the world where they're eliminating cars and putting in buses and bikes, that it proves on its own that the environmental impact is going to be great for the planet. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Jackie, and I'm a junior at Westchester High School.
Oh, great.
I'm a bus rider on the 115 through Manchester. And I would like to thank you all for securing the funding for the environmental developments for this. And I want to express the need for the bus-only lane. I am urging the committee to implement a bus-only lane on Wilshire. The project needs to be pushed through as soon as possible. I ask that the city upfront the money as soon as possible. The reason is that if the bus-only lane is started on Wilshire, it will be able to be pushed through many cities, and mainly Manchester, because down Manchester, there's traffic for hours and hours, and most of us are late to school because of the heavy traffic, and we get tickets, truancy tickets, and we miss a lot of important information in class. So if the bus-only lane is here, it'll cut the transportation time about half, so I ask for the bus-only lane.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here as well. Monty Maribel and Francisca. And after those two will be Stephanie Taylor and Igar Kagan.
Hi, my name is Monty Marable. I am a student at University High School. I am currently in the 10th grade. I want to thank you all for providing funds for the environmental assessment report, and I urge you to approve this motion. I urge you to expedite the assessment process and implement bus-only lanes as soon as possible. Every day, all the rapid buses, the 720 and the 920, are running in traffic, and it's a long time for us to get to school. With the bus-only lane, students can provide students better better productivity, and they can learn faster. It'll give them like more time to study, do homework, graduate. So they can graduate though, basically. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Francisca Porchas with the Bus Riders Union. So I want to echo thank you for making this environmental assessment happen as soon as possible. We're actually very impressed, and so we want to thank you first and foremost for your leadership.
They're impressed with us. That's right.
Yes. We're not easily impressed either. And so the other thing I want to say is also commend Councilmember Rosendahl for putting out just even the concept of expediting the environmental assessment for 6 months. This thing, which we actually think is very interesting, is an environmental impact report that wasn't in 2000. It was very expensive, and it took a very long time. There's got to be something in here, we can even ask MTA, something in here that can possibly be of use for whatever sort of impact report has to be done. Obviously, it's been 8 years of studying this project since 2000. And so it's been long enough, and we're just urging you to please figure out how to streamline this process. Thank you.
Thanks for always being a good nudge for us too.
MTA, would you?
They have one.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Taylor. I'm here representing Green LA, the Transportation Work Group, and I think we're on the same page. The only thing I wanted to sort of let you know is that there's a whole coalition that has the bus-only lane as our number one priority, because we really need to show that transit is one of the important solutions to addressing the traffic problem. So the coalition represents people ranging from the Bus Riders Union to the Transit Coalition to the Bicycle Coalition to the Sierra Club, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Igor Kagan. I'm with the American Lung Association, also part of Green LA. And I'm here also to echo what my friends have said about expediting the process. I'm really glad that, you all have mentioned that. And I see the traffic on Wilshire outside my window every day, and we breathe in the pollution from it every day. So I thank you for expressing your sentiments and hope it moves forward as fast as possible.
Thank you very much. Last speaker is Arnold Sachs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Just very quickly, I'd like to point out from the West Side, Metro West Side Extension Transit Corridor, in 1998, due to funding constraints, Metro suspended the project, which was to build an extension of this Wilshire, the red line at that time, from Wilshire Western to Pico San Vicente. Why, we don't know. Just some money. In 1998, due to funding constraints, Metro suspended the project and focused its attention on developing bus and light rail transit options for the West Side. The Wilshire Rapid Bus Transit, 1998, 10 years. That would assume that would be phase one. How long will phase two be? Also like to know that you integrate the new helicab program with the bus-only lanes, because that's a big deal on Wilshire Boulevard, and maybe take the time to consider bus-only lanes for the 10 freeway. That would work really well.
Thank you very much. On this item, we're going to approve the $200,000 of the, I guess it would be the DOT report that is before us, $200,000 in Prop C funds, and between now and the time it goes to council, we'll identify the particular account number. Correct? That's right. Okay. Yes.
Did we identify where what source that 8.2 front or matching fund money was coming from?
From the JUT, it says the JUT Out project?
Yeah, I don't quite know what that means.
Can anyone from the department, either MTA or whatever, the JUT Out project?
It comes from the MTA call for projects project that was approved several years ago. Okay. It's still in the design phase after the Bureau of Engineering.
And Madam Chair, what if we could, after we approve this through the council, is get a report in a month as to the timeline of where they are on both the environmental study and everything else, so that we can get the timetable clear.
Okay. Shall do. Okay, that'll be the order. Next item.
Brings us to item 6, which is a Rule Rosendahl motion relative to directing the CLA to prepare necessary motions to analyze the legislative efforts and initiatives proposed by some member here at his, or at a,
Is this,
January 10th.
item 4 we haven't done yet?
Yeah, I don't think you've done 4.
Oh, the,
4, sorry.
We're originally going to do it on consent.
We were going to do it on consent. We do have speaker cards here today, so.
final ordinance for the
Final ordinance, yeah.
free parking of automobile vehicles.
Just to clarify again, this merely is the technical correction to the original draft ordinance to comply with state law with a sunset clause that conforms to state law.
Correct. So I know we have some, they're here against the proposal that we have on this item number 4. We'll also do just 1 minute on those items. But again, this is something the council already adopted. It is just the implementing ordinance. So Stephen Box, Paul Foch?
Oh, it's already been adopted.
Okay. Sorry that again it is something that the ordinance, this is just the implementing ordinance. The conceptual part of this was adopted by the full city council of extending. I'm sorry, you can sure? No, that's we just want to make sure you knew what was before us. So so Stephen Box, Paul has indicated you don't want to speak? No. Yeah. Okay. NC Box, Damian Newton, and Yuval Kramer. Go ahead, Stephen.
Stephen Box. I know it's unpopular to be opposed to hybrids. I'm not. I think they're great. But I don't think there's such a thing as free parking. It's valuable real estate, and I hate to see it given away. This is taking up space. I don't care if they're burning butterflies and rainbows. It's still taking up valuable real estate. And so I'd love to see us take a more comprehensive approach to taking a look at our parking spaces and turning them into revenue sources for the communities. I'm a chupista. So I'm opposed to this particular endeavor.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Nancy Box, and I'm also opposed to this. There is the entire world is charging cars. They're removing streets for buses and bikes, and Los Angeles is lobbying to get free access to cars, and regardless of regardless if it's hybrid or non-hybrid or big or small, we need to charge cars wherever they go, and as Stephen Bach said, we need to allocate that money maybe towards putting service into the metro that they're wanting to cut, or the bus-only lanes. I mean, there is so many great ways to spend the money, and we need the money. The city needs the money. And the majority of our citizens do have cars. Let them pay for the city, for better streets, and for better service. So I'm against this project. Thank you.
Damian Newton and Yuval Kramer.
Hey, good afternoon. Sorry, I must have missed this when it went through council. I think I remember it being in November or sometime maybe December that it was talked about. There's sort of two different angles I wanted to take to quickly sort of throw out here that why I don't think this is a good idea. The first is because there's no more stickers to give out at the state level for cars. This isn't about encouraging people to, and I would say this to the state too, it's not really about encouraging people anymore to buy hybrids. It's rewarding people that already have. A 2003 Jeep Ram something station wagon van can have a sticker and get the free parking, and a 2008 Prius can't. So it's just, that's one thing. The second thing is there is a cost to free parking. UCLA professor Donald Shoup estimates that cars spend an extra half mile driving around looking for cheap parking. If you take that to 100,000 trips a year, that's 50,000 miles of VMT that we're adding to local LA roads because of this. The third thing is it's going to cost the city $116,000 a year to do this. If you could take that money, put it aside, get a match from Metro, there's funding for a shuttle to Dodger Stadium. Thank you.
Hi, Yuval Kramer. I'm on the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council, and I represent homeowners. I listened in on the last time this was here, I believe, and I think it was somebody from the city that said that this has gone from being an incentives program to being a rewards program. And I agree with the city cannot afford to be doing this kind of stuff now with the budget problems we're having. And I actually think the estimate is low. I suspect it's higher than that. And, you know, I mean, the real incentive is $4 gas, and it's going to $5. And, you know, nobody can get these decals any further. So you're talking about a niche group of people that are being treated like VIPs. They haven't had to pay for parking for several years. Why should that continue for the next 3 years? disabled people are not, this is going to take parking spaces away from customers, away from disabled people, and it's lost revenue to the city, and I oppose it, and I just think it's ridiculous. Thank you.
I think it would just be important to note, and we did have that kind of debate as to whether or not to continue or not, and I think, I don't know if I make the difficult choice, but made the choice to continue it with the existing state program. But all of the points made on the parking policy and how it impacts and people driving around is why we're looking at parking meter rates, why we're looking at a number of other things that help address the fact that if you make it too easy for people, then they're going to drive around and cause not only traffic but environmental issues. So we're very equally concerned about that.
Madam Chair, can I ask DOT to come up on this one? I know we're on a time crunch, but I got to say as an opening start on this is that my sympathies for continuing it are no longer there. I frankly believe that we do need the revenue stream, and I think it's become a bigger issue, and they did have a benefit of a few years on this process. It just refreshed my mind why we wanted to extend it rather than let it just sunset.
DOT position was not necessarily to extend it. So.
I was going to say, Councilmember, you're putting the DOT in an awkward position, but this was in fact the will of the City Council, not necessarily the recommendation of the department.
We're all human here, but where did the will of the City Council come from on this? What was our logic at the time? Because the logic of the four speakers, frankly, is compelling.
What I recall, I believe it was 2 committee meetings, not only one. We continued this item. The debates went on for 2 separate committee meetings, and I think the department was merely reporting back on the directions that were given to us many months ago on that. So we provided the facts and the numbers, and approximately 500 hybrids were using the city. We used some assumptions, some aggregates, and that came out roughly about $116,000 annually is the correct number that was in our report. And I believe this went to council, and there was some discussion in council. Councilmember Rosendahl, I don't recall the debates on the council floor, but my recollection is it was a unanimous vote to extend it for the decal program. So this is only the vehicles that have the decals through the California vehicle program, and currently that is slated for the 2011 January, but Caltrans through the air quality may have to push that back. So the way the ordinance is written, that it does coincide with whatever that date is to be able to, and I apologize for that.
And I think, some of the discussion was to make the city's program consistent with the state. So if the state was extending theirs, we would keep modify it slightly as DOT talked about.
That's what I thought. I remember as a discussion, it was the state was extending
Correct.
it to 2011.
Correct.
So we're just in uniform with the state law.
Correct, council member. And the other way the program was originally, there was a few other vehicles that were included in the mix of the hybrids that did not have the decal, that created an enforcement issue for the department to only do those. So this, in a way, made it more concise and consistent with the state, and also helped enforcement looking for the decal program as the key indicator to
what would be
enforce.
the repercussions if we discussed this and decided not to do it? I mean,
The
mechanics with the state and the law.
The council would be at liberty legally to reconsider this matter and repeal this ordinance at any time that it chose to. I also recall that part of the discussion was that since the state has stopped issuing new decals for hybrids, that there was a known quantity of vehicles. It was
85,000 total in California.
Now, of course, the state could decide to issue new ones, in which case that would increase the sum total of vehicles that could take advantage of this privilege. But at least as to the time when the discussion went forward on the floor of council, there was a working assumption that we had a known quantity of vehicles as opposed to an ever-expanding quantity of vehicles who would have access to this privilege.
Just the last question, is anybody else around the state, like San Francisco or Sacramento or San Diego, going with the state law or what?
I apologize. Alan Willis is my expert, and he's not here. I believe San Francisco does have that program. I'm not sure if Sacramento. I know a few other smaller cities, Santa Monica, I believe, Pasadena. So there's a few other smaller cities that have the same, but I'm not sure if I have all of the cities in California that implement this program.
Maybe before it goes to council.
I would think, could you look at San
Sure.
Diego and these other places and bring that?
Definitely. I can do that.
So we can ask those questions in council
Yeah,
again.
and I might say that at this point, I got to really be persuaded to vote yes for this at this point, because I don't know, I've seen a little bit of light in the notion that $118,000, and especially if I want to charge a buck rather than a quarter, that's another $300,000 for the city treasury. Plus, they've had a wonderful benefit for a period of years as it is, and a lot of people are buying hybrids everywhere, and maybe I might get up there and publicly say no is where I'm at, maybe. I mean, this is all happening at the moment.
It is a policy, and the department will provide whatever factual information we can for you. It was a policy decision that I think, as Councilmember Gruhl mentioned, it was a tough decision back and forth, but you just had to make a decision based on what information we had presented to you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item.
So are we moving?
And he reserves the right to vote no, as Mr. Labange also said.
That brings us to item 6, which is the Rosendahl motion directing the CLA to prepare the necessary motions to analyze the legislative efforts put forward by Assembly Member Pure.
Yeah.
So in response to this motion, CLA has prepared reports and resolutions for the Rules and Elections Committee.
And those are not before us today, those reports?
No, all the legislative resolutions and reports go to Rules and Elections Committee, so we're hoping that they're going to be scheduled at their next meeting next week so that the city can have an official position on all these bills before they are passed by the first policy committee. So, but we do have them on all the bills.
Okay. Because colleagues, there's some, intriguing ideas here that we want to make sure that we look at.
Yeah.
So what this really does is just approve the motion that asks them to do the reports for Rules and Elections.
Which we've done, yeah, and we're recommending support on all of them except 2 of them, which are supporting concept because they're general right now and just have the idea out there. The details will be worked out later.
Great.
Yes.
Maria, is this the package we talked about at MTA? Did they take a position on these already?
Most of them, if not all.
And what was their MTA's position?
They were supporting in concept one of the infrastructure financing district one.
No one's in public comment.
We're not in
Public comment.
consistent at this point.
General public comment?
Okay. Great. Okay. Last item then. So that one just be approving the motion.
Gives your report relative to advertising on city transit buses.
Jim Lefton from the Department of Transportation. I'll be brief. This is an update on the status of our bus advertising program. We entered into a contract in October of 2006 with a company called Titan Worldwide to do exterior and interior advertising on our entire fleet of transit buses, including Commute Express, Dash, and City Ride, about nearly 400 vehicles. On page 3 of the report gives you an idea of how the contract is laid out in terms of the compensation plan. Provides by year the minimum annual guarantee that we're assured to get. And then it also mentions the net revenue share percentage. We'll get the higher of the 2 amounts. So if the net revenues, 50% of the net revenues are higher than the minimum annual guarantee, we'll get the higher of those 2 amounts. For the first year of the contract, October 2006 through October 2007, we received a total of $436,355, which was more than twice the first year minimum annual guarantee, and actually was even higher than the 5th year annual guarantee. So we're very pleased with the amount of revenues that we received for our first year. If I have mentioned already, the advertising on our buses was limited on the exterior to the rear of our buses. The concern that we had going in to this process was the impact on our brand identity. We spent many years building up our brand identity for our services and differentiating them from the services that Metro operates. So we wanted to strike a balance between additional revenues and our brand identity. However, with the city's shortfall and Proposition A funds being as extensive as it is, we started looking aggressively at strategies that we could possibly increase the amount of revenues above and beyond what we've already received in our first year. And we've been in discussions with Titan, and we're just wrapping up some final details to allow advertising on the sides of our commuter express buses with a type of ad called a King ad, which is a large ad on the sides of the buses. It would involve some relocation of existing decals and shrinking and moving to the front so that we could put the ad on the buses. But in general, there's a high demand for these types of advertisements. Titan has estimated that we could see $375,000 to $400,000 a year in additional revenues, which would nearly double the amount of revenue that we're currently getting with the rear of the buses. So there's some graphics that are attached that kind of show you what the express buses look like now, and with the side advertising, with the redesigned look, and then there's a summary of a business pro forma that gives some details on the proposal that we're working with on Titan. And so we're hoping to wrap those discussions up the next couple of weeks and get the process started to do the redesigns on the buses and get the King ads on the buses. We've also had some very preliminary discussions about possibly expanding the program to include Dash and City Ride. Using King ads would not be able to be accommodated because of their size, but possibly some smaller types of advertisements. And so we're going to have some initial discussions with Titan about that as well.
And you're doing the internal as well?
Yes.
Internal advertising. But was that part of the 108 minimum guarantee in that?
Yes, that's part of the annual.
That was. But I think, as I wrote a couple of, I didn't see much inside. So
there may have been some cleanup for buses that were used for that purpose, but the buses are typically pretty full with interior advertising, although the amount of revenues generated by interior advertising is very small compared to exterior.
Compared to the exterior. So, well, again, on the budgetary side, and as well as trying to still keep our brand. I mean, I think the design that you have for the outside of the commuter express, and I know that the Dash buses are a little bit different because of the big windows that you have, but I think the time has come that we are facing deficits and furloughs and layoffs and not providing services. That this is a easy way in which to be able to increase our revenue on an ongoing basis, and it seems like it's been effective.
Yes, it has.
I'd just like to say, it was a good idea we had, right? It was. Can you admit that, Jim?
I have no problem. I certainly appreciate the financial situation that we're in, and the time was right, and it's worked very well so far. We're way ahead of our projections, so we're very pleased with the results.
I think that's yes. I'm just saying that.
Thank you, Maria.
Well, they weren't ecstatic about it.
Can I ask you this?
Sure.
Did we do a sole source or an RFP?
RFP.
Is there any ability to negotiate the net revenue share percentage up higher? I see 50%, 50%, and then 55, 55, and 50.
That was part of a competitive RFP process. I don't know if there's much opportunity or our willingness to give us more than was agreed to under a competitive process. But again, these numbers were in excess of what other proposals are willing to offer. So, and this is pretty standard for the industry based on our preliminary research before we put the RFP out.
Great, thanks.
So I know one of the things as we look at our budget and whether or not the mayor includes this in his budget or not, it would be monies we would, I think, include in our budget.
I could just ask you one thing. There was that controversy at MTA about, what do they call it, wrapping?
Bus wraps, yeah.
Is that part of the program?
No, at this point, the RFP primarily focused on exterior advertising on the rear of our buses, but it did provide a window that we could look to additional advertising on the sides if it didn't impact the brand identity. So we're taking an incremental step to look at King ads on the sides. Bus wraps tend to be, like you said, very controversial with riders, where you basically lose all your brand identity, and a lot of people that ride buses don't like the feeling of being inside like a rolling billboard to a certain extent. But, I mean, anything's open at this point, but this is, in our estimation, a good next step for taking the program.
Do we have an idea what the difference in the potential funds from wrapping and what they call them king ads?
I can certainly find that information out.
It's significant.
Yeah, I would think that there would be, I can't hazard a guess, but I would guess that it would be higher, much higher than the king ads would be.
I can just see from some of the buses, like, what is it, Wachovia?
Yeah.
They just seem to have taken over the MTA bus system, and so the revenue has to be significant. And although, like you said, there is no room for other signage.
Right.
But it is a driving billboard, but it obviously is quite lucrative.
We can get the information to you on what that estimated revenue would be.
So I think we want to adopt, let's see.
What's
They're recommending, the DOT is recommending what? To come back in 30 days with the...
This was a receive and file.
Receive and file.
We're moving ahead with the program. We just want to let
Okay.
you know what we're planning.
Okay. So what we will, again, need when it comes to budget committee, which all three of us serve on as well, and so maybe we'll get a report back. We'll figure out with you prior to the budget going to budget committee, identify what we think the revenue source, what our estimates would be for next year.
Sure. And the committee does understand that these revenues that are generated go back into the Prop A fund, not the general fund.
Got it.
How long would it take to get that wrapping information?
I can get back to you in a few days.
To get the what? The wrap?
The wrap
I know.
just to get an idea of what the difference, because I understand it's very lucrative.
Yeah.
I can share that with
Boy, if Jim didn't like me going on the back of the buses, I don't know. You're going to have to,
But Jim is mellowing.
He is mellowing.
He doesn't speak in as many codes as he used to. I could actually understand him.
I'm trying.
It's all one big happy family, so. All right. So that'll be a receive and file. We'll get a report back in about 30 days prior to the budget going to the city council, so, because we'll probably see. Yes. I think that's it. Oh,
we have
I'm sorry.
general
We have
public
two
comment.
public comments. I'm sorry. Arnold Sachs and Yuval Kramer. My apologies.
Looks like Arnold left us.
Yeah. Hi. Yuval Kramer. With regards to this budget situation we're in, and everything's on the table, I went yesterday and looked at parking meters in my area, and I've done this before, and I just think that the rates on the parking meters, I live near the Beverly Center, CD5, and I just think that they're way too low. It seems like they're stuck from the 80s.
Most haven't been increased in 7 years.
I felt like they need to go up, like they could easily go up 50%, and on major commercial streets, and in some areas, in some areas they could go up 100%. On 3rd Street between La Cienega and Fairfax, it's $1 for 2 hours maximum, and you get that for $1. These are expensive stores, expensive restaurants. People can pay double that. But I mean, politically, you should just increase it 50%, I think. Also on hours, it clocks out at 6 p.m. It should go until 10 p.m. because all of these restaurants are operating well into the evening, and you're just leaving money on the table by, I'd like that extended to 10 p.m. And, yeah.
You've been reading our minds here because I know both the
I'm
mayor
up
and
to
Bill
$1
and I. Yeah.
rather than a quarter, and that's where I want to push it
At
as a
least
start.
$1 an hour. So.
$1 an hour.
Thank you very much for coming, Yvonne. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.